Hello and a warm welcome, thanks for joining. In this video I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide to cladding furniture using old Venetian blind slats. I haven't seen this coastal design on YouTube before, and my local cafe is where I gained the inspiration from. I'm using chalk painted blinds for this piece. These are from my beginner's guide to chalk paint, where we compare different price brackets of chalk paint on the market today. So I'm using my chop saw here in order to cut equal parts of these blinds, particularly where you normally have the string run through to pull the blinds up. So we're just getting rid of those cuts and creating, for a cladded look, different lengths of Venetian blinds. So we'll have two equal side elements and then a centre element that is much longer. I would not like to know what has been stuck to this in the past. This is out of an old pub. As you can see, it has had a real life history, to put it mildly. So I'm just giving it a good scuff sand here. I'm taking away any sticky bits and any hardened gum, you know, the joys of upcycling furniture. And then don't forget to give it a good clean down after you finish sanding, because we're going to be putting glue on this surface. Next up, it's time to dry lay our pattern. Now I've attempted here to use two different sizes of Venetian blinds in widths. I'd got a lot of leftovers of offcuts of Venetian blinds, and I wanted to see if I could use the patterns to cheat it and be able to work with the different sizes, i.e. replicate that cladded wall perfectly. Alas, this was not to be the case, and I would recommend truly that you just stick to the same size widths to make it very easy. Next up, you want to make sure that you've got really good wood glue. I'm using Evo wood glue. It's what chippers use over here. I've used this wood glue to join two pieces of timber together to extend door frames in old buildings seamlessly. As you can see, some of my Venetian blind lengths are bowed, which is why they are kicking up. Specifically, the fourth and fifth piece in from the end, you can see they're kinking out, but we're going to weight them down and we're going to just use slabs in order that we can do this outside easily. Not to bore you too much, so we're jumping ahead here. Same technique, but as you can see, I am now running low on Venetian blinds, so we have two white, well in fact three white sections all next to each other. Now, I am so close to the Venetian blinds fitting in width perfectly, so what I've done is just staggered those joints a little bit, and then I've gone and got one extra element of Venetian blind in order to fit it in. Okay, here come the slabs. These are just two half slabs out the garden. Be careful when you put them down, because the wood glue is still wet, and the problem with the wood glue being wet is those pieces can slide around. The back left piece on this side, that actually set on a slight kink, as you can see there. Now, two saws. You've got two options because we are going to cut this. Don't be tempted to turn the table over and go against the Venetian blinds. Saw through the Venetian blinds on the top. These two saws, you have a tenon saw and a second fixed saw. I prefer to use a second fixed saw, fine bladed, but I've been using saws for years. You may work better with a tenon saw. A tenon saw is less flexible. You can always use the back of the blade in order to draw a straight line, and I always give a 5mm difference between where the table ends and where I'm going to cut. You can sand Venetian blind really quickly, very easily, and you just want to create that curve as well next to the table so as it looks like a seamless joint that should be there. Cut nice and slowly and draw the blade into you. Okay, a little trick here. You can put your finger against the upper part of the blade to drive it gently against the tabletop. That will keep you nice and straight. If you get into trouble, just pull the blade back gently again. Ideally, you would clamp this down. I couldn't be bothered. That's reality. And if you haven't got clamps, you can see it is perfectly doable without clamps. Again, if you have trouble with any of them, because some of them will splinter much easier than others, just pull the blade back nice and slowly. And I'm not speeding this up so as you can see exactly how long it will take. and then you can see the overall look of the table. But at this point we really do want to fill in the joints, so we need a good wood filler and we need some decent sandpaper, and I'm going to be using my orbital sander just because it's so much quicker. So I just want to take back the sides of the table so as they are really just seamlessly moving between the Venetian slats and the timber of the frame of the table. Don't forget your PPE at this stage. Helps to have a really good mask, stop those really tiny particles going through, and some decent goggles, because the amount of times I get sawdust in my eyes and little dust particles that itch for days. And you don't need to move your sander fast if you're using an electric orbital sander. It's just nice and steady, and it will just easily get through Venetian blind slats. Curve those corners, make them nice and tight. This means you won't need any filler between the Venetian blind slat if the glue's good and you've weighted it down, and the table itself. It will just seamlessly blend. Once you've created that curve, you can drag the sander down to create even a softer, almost blending motion. And then don't forget to sand the edges of the table itself, so as you bring it all back into one. So here I'm just giving a quick light sand across the whole of the tabletop, almost to tone down those colours just a little bit before we start filling. Next it's time for the wood filler, and I'm just using a standard Wix own brand, inexpensive interior wood filler. I want something that's easy to sand, I want something that's going to fill those joints, be semi-flexible, just to give that little bit of growth between any timber will expand and contract a minimal amount. And these Venetian blinds are no different. You want something that has a little element of flexibility within it. I'm not going to lie here or sugarcoat it, this bit is boring. It will take you about 20 minutes give or take in order to do the whole table, but the finished look is worth it, trust me, keep going. You can just start to see here how it's going to look when you sanded it back. This has still got the filler on it, but it's just starting to show its first hints of really coming together as a coastal table.
And he washes
oh yes, and it's tea break time.
And a fresh made pot of tea. Have a cup of tea. Have a cup of tea. Have a cup of tea.
Okay, so here comes the fun bit. This is where we are getting rid of all the filled elements between each one of the Venetian blind slats, and it's also where we start to tone those colours across between the greens, the blues and the greys and the whites. This is exactly where it gives the coastal finish and the coastal look overall. Now it's time for a little chalk paint. I'm using Dixie Belle French linen. I'm just going to coat round the table edges and then do a little bit of dragging, almost rag rolling, dragging technique across the table to move those colours, tone down some of the greens and make the blues and the greens and the greys more seamless. At this point I'm just doing a 50-50 ratio water to chalk paint and mixing that up almost to give a wash technique. I do want us to see some of the timber coming through on the side edges of the table, and then we're going to brush it over the top using a rag. Here I'm just brushing on the paint wash with a synthetic brush and not really giving it too much attention and curving over the edge of the Venetian blind. Then I'm going to take a clean dry cloth and just drag the paint off. Line by line, keep dragging it back until you can see as much timber as you want to see underneath it. Now if you would like to see more timber underneath it, use a damp rag. Always remember that if you use too much and you pull it back too far, don't worry, just put the wash on again and start all over. The reason we put so much water in with the wash is to keep the paint fluid so as we can work with it at a later stage, i.e. it doesn't settle too far into the timber before you start removing it. And you can see just at this point, start to see the edges of the timber come through. You can start to see the tones of the wood. You can almost see as well where we've had sanding marks cut in there from big grinders that have dented the timber, and I quite like that. I like those tones of the wood coming through. Okay, next we're going to spray that same rag with water, and quite a substantial amount of water, because we want to loosen the colours that we've already taken onto the rag. We want to make sure we can drag them over the table and add some of those tones just really gently into that table to make the edges of the table blend into the top of the table and the colours to blend into each other. If, like me, your rag has dried too much and you're not loosening up enough colour out of the rag, then by all means take the brush with the wash on it and just dab some of that colour onto the rag and then try again. You'll see a massive difference here. As you do this, just move the rag along with the Venetian blinds, just seamlessly and gliding across with a swift motion, just moving that paint from side to side. And then when you're happy with the centre elements, just give it a gentle glide off the edges so as it blends all the centre points into the edges of the table. Next, you can put on as much or as little as you like, and you can blend those colours, because now we have the wooden timber elements of the Venetian blinds, then the original painted cream Venetian blinds, and then the colours that we've added to it, which in my case are the greens and the greys and the blues in 2 different tones. So now we're trying to blend all those colours together so as they work as one harmonious table. If you've enjoyed this tutorial and you like this design and inspiration, then please do give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe for more unusual design ideas. Hit the bell, that'll give you a reminder every week when we release our video. Finally, it's time for a good quality finishing wax, and the reason I'm using a wax as opposed to a harder surface topper is solely because a wax will go in. So where we've sanded back some of the filler and it's left tiny little elements that are free, the wax will go in and fill that, and as we put the first coat on and then take a rag and clean it off, and put the second coat on, take a rag and clean it off, that wax will help to bond into those joints and become part of the table. And here we have a close-up of the finished article. I wanted to show you this really closely so as you can get an idea for the quality. It really does look like a beautiful piece of furniture now, and so different from what it was to what it is. Here's a quick reminder of how it used to look and how it looks now.